You are listening to the Primitive Intelligence Podcast, episode 509, The Mystery of Cicada 3301. If you're unfamiliar with this, strap in. It's just like that. It's very confusing. I'm flying solo this week because Rocco's not feeling too good. He has a little bit of a headache. And this is probably a good one for him to miss because this would just make his headache worse. There's a lot of circles that we run in with this story. What I'm doing though is because I was expecting to have him here to bounce some things off. In my research, I keep notes. I got my notes up in front of me. And there's spots where I was expecting to have him here to bounce stuff off of. So I'm going to have to change things up on the fly. So bear with me. But to help break up a little bit of the monotony of just one person constantly talking, what I've done is some of the messages that are relayed from one group to another in this story, I ran through a voice-to-text software just so it stands out a little more than me just constantly reading stuff off. Without any further ado, I'm going to get right into the story. Episode 509 of the Primitive Intelligence Podcast starts now. So like I said, we got to go back a little over 10 years from this recording. On January 4th, 2012, on the 4chan website, they had a group. It was just labeled X, but it was like their paranormal website. And a mysterious image popped up. It was a black image, black background with white text on it. And it had this very mysterious message. And the message went like this.
Hello, we are looking for highly intelligent individuals. To find them, we have devised a test. There is a message hidden in this image. Find it, and it will lead you on the road to finding us. We look forward to meeting the few that will make it all the way through. Good luck, 3301.
Now, this image was named final.jpg. No one knows who this 3301 was. It never posted before. So a little bit of a mystery there. People thought that this might have been some kind of NSA recruiting tactic or ARG, an alternate reality game where you use things like this to play a game out in reality. Think kind of like Pokemon Go, but instead of carrying your phone with you and following the clues, you just use the images to do it. So 4chan users, intrigued, started trying to figure out what was going on. So they tried different things to get the information out of the image itself, thinking of it visually, until someone realized that line, there is a message hidden in this image, was meant literally. The message is in the file, not in the visual image. So they opened up the image in like Notepad, a text editor. And since text editors can't render images, all it does is dump out a bunch of gibberish code. In this instance, though, at the bottom, there was one line of code that made a little bit of sense. And that line of code was Tiberius Claudius Caesar says, and then in quotes, there was a string of seemingly gibberish. But people saw that string. Something looks familiar about it. There's too many repeating letters and numbers. So they got to work on figuring out what this was. Now, I'm not into ciphers and decrypting things, so I would never have made any of these connections. But people who are into decrypting in puzzles and things like this immediately saw the word Caesar and figured this has to be a Caesar cipher. Now, by name, you might not know what that is, but I'm sure as a kid you probably did something like this, because I know I did, where you take the alphabet and you offset it by a certain amount of letters. And then that's your new alphabet. So picture it if you're picturing it in your mind, type out the alphabet on one line, and then below it, you type out the alphabet again, but you have that offset by, let's say, 8 characters. So it would start at H. And then when you get to the end of your first line, you wrap around and finish the alphabet under the first part of the alphabet above it. And that gives you your new alphabet. Now, that's pretty simple, but there's letters and special characters in this string. So they had to make a modified Caesar cipher, and they wound up figuring out what this says by finding the value, the key, how many letters they should offset the alphabet by. And to do that, you have to look at that line again and ask yourself, who was Tiberius Claudius Caesar? Well, turns out he was the 4th emperor of Rome. Giving them their value of 4, they offset the alphabet, and it all falls into place. That string of code is a URL, and it points you to an imager link with a picture, another picture. This one is of a wooden decoy duck, and it has the following message typed on it.
Whoops, just decoys this way. Looks like you can't guess how to get the message out.
Now, some things stuck out to me immediately, and this is probably why I don't do these things, because I would have been way off. I immediately noticed that whoops is spelled wrong. Whoops. Not W-H-O-O-P-S, but just W-O-O-P-S. Maybe that's normal in some areas, but I've never seen it spelled that way. And I thought that the name of the file was weird. It's just random letters and numbers, but apparently that's just how Imager does it. If you upload a file, no matter what you call it, when you upload it to them, they change the file name. I kind of assumed that this was just a decoy, like maybe the first image wasn't decoded properly. I guess technically it wasn't. And I wonder if you were to try to follow any information that was in this image, if it would have taken you the wrong way. I didn't see any information where anybody had done that. And just out of my own curiosity, I wanted to know what kind of duck this was. And it is a decoy of a black duck. So again, it's the actual wording of this message that clues people into what the next step is. So in encryption and decryption circles, ciphering circles, there is a program called Outguess. And people found this by, I'm assuming, the weird placement of the word out because it's on its own line, and kind of the oddness of the phrasing here. It looks like you can't guess how to get the message out. So Outguess is a steganography program. And I looked this up because I had no idea. Steganography is the practice of concealing information within another message or physical object to avoid detection. So there's information hidden in this image. When they run this image through this outguess, they get another message. And this message says, here's a book code. To find the book and more information, go to, there's a link. And it is a Reddit subreddit link. Below that, there's a series of numbers. And then good luck, 3301. Now the numbers are the book code. And what they do is there's like a page number and then a letter number, like a page and position. So you go to the page and then whatever that letter is or whatever that word is, depending on how the book code is kind of set up, and you figure that out as you're trying to decipher it. But then you use those letters or words to substitute for the cipher code. But you got to know what the book is. So they go to the subreddit link. When they get there, there's one image and a few text-only posts. The image is a welcome mat obviously with the word welcome on it. And then they run that through Outguess. And the message that they get from that basically says that all further messages will be signed with a PGP key for authenticity. And a PGP key is, it's called Pretty Good Privacy. And it's a security program that's used to encrypt and decrypt emails. Below that, it says patience is a virtue. Good luck, 3301. A short time later, another image is posted, but by a different user. This image is called Problems, and it depicts patterns of a King Arthur tapestry that are repeated. It's like 2 lines, and it's repeated 6 or 7 times, but there's this weird warp to the image. They run that image through Outguess, and the message they get is the key has always been right in front of your eyes. This isn't the quest for the Holy Grail. Stop making it more difficult than it is. Good luck, 3301. When they look at those tapestries, they realize that they kind of form a magic eye poster. If you remember those, it's those posters of all the shapes and colors, and when you stare at it and let your eyes relax, you see an image. They've never worked for me. I've never been able to do it. But apparently when you do that with this image, you see a cup, the Holy Grail. Apparently that none of that has anything to do with the riddle, with the puzzle, but it was kind of neat. They keep looking, trying to figure out what's going on, because none of that solves this puzzle. Someone realizes that the subreddit has an image in the header, and the image is of these symbols. The symbols turn out to be Mayan numerals, and the sequence is 10, 2, 14, 7, 19, 6, 18, 12, 7, 8, 17, 0, and 19. Now, when you're looking for puzzles everywhere, you start seeing all the little clues. Someone realized that the Reddit name, the subreddit name, which was very odd, it was just a sequence of letters and numbers. It actually corresponded to these Mayan numerals. The numbers in the Reddit name lined up with the numbers in these Mayan numerals. The letters below them lined up with other numbers, which started to create a key, which allowed them to start going through some of the text-only posts and build an actual key that led them to the fact that they needed a different kind of cipher. Roundabout, you got to have some time in your hands to start figuring this stuff out. What they needed was, I'm going to probably murder the name of this, a Visionaire cipher. It looks French, which uses a text key to assign a separate Caesar cipher to each letter of the encryption. So instead of one Caesar cipher for the entire alphabet, you need 26 Caesar ciphers. So a little bit more complicated. As they assign this to more of the text-only posts in this Reddit subreddit, they wind up decrypting text from an old collection of Welsh stories called the Mabinogion. The Lady of the Fountain is the particular story. The Mabinogion is mostly Arthurian legend and stories. It was translated by this Charlotte Guest, who was the first person to translate it into English. And then really the only connection with the puzzle with that information is that the person who was posting the images, or the two people that were posting the images, their names were anagrams of Mabinogion, and the other was an anagram of Charlotte Guest. Further decrypting of these text-only messages wound up uncovering a phone number, and when called, they were greeted with a voice message.
Very good. You have done well. There are 3 prime numbers associated with the original final.jpg image. 3301 is one of them. You will have to find the other 2. Multiply all 3 of these numbers together and add a .com to find the next step. Good luck. Goodbye.
So with the one number in hand, 3301, they got to find the other 2 prime numbers associated with this image. It turns out that the next 2 prime numbers, the other 2 prime numbers, are the dimensions of the image, 509 by 503 pixels. So when you take 509, multiply it by 503, multiply that by 3301, you get 845,145,127. When you add a .com to that, it takes you to a web page. Now at this point, the only identifier anybody knew was 3301. Everything was signed by 3301. When you go to this web page, it shows you the picture, an image of a cicada, and a countdown under it that expired on January 9th, 2012 at 5 p.m. So now the cicada starts to come into it. Someone takes that image of the cicada, they run it through Outguess, and they get the following message of, "You have done well to come this far. Patience is a virtue. Check back at 1700 on Monday, January 9th, 2012, UTC 3301. So this patience is a virtue pops up a lot. Whether it has any significance, I don't know, but you see it in a lot of their messages. When the countdown ended, the image changed and showed that cicada logo, and then below it, it read, "Find our symbol at a location nearest you." That was followed by a list of 14 coordinates that were scattered around the world, all GPS coordinates scattered around the world. At each of those locations, papers were found mostly stapled to telephone poles or taped to windows with that same cicada symbol and a QR code. So this is more than just one user on 4chan. These things were scattered around the world. I believe they were on every continent except for Africa and Antarctica, I believe. But this appeared to be a much larger organization. So people thinking that it might be like the CIA or something like that, starting to probably have a little more belief in that. When you scan the QR codes, they took you to one of two images, a white on black image of the cicada logo with the word everywhere above it and 3301 below it. The two images were both run through Outguess, and the messages were slightly different. The first one said, in 29 volumes, knowledge was once contained. How many lines of the code remained when the Mabinogian paused? Go that far in from the beginning and find my first name. There was then a list of like book code coordinates, and a few of the lines said the product of the first two prime numbers, the first prime, the product of the first two prime numbers. And then below that, there was kind of a warning that said, you've shared too much to this point. We want the best, not the followers. Thus, the first few there will receive the prize. Because up to this point, everybody was collaborating. So they don't want people collaborating now. The second image said, a poem of fading death, named for a king, meant to be read only once and vanish. Alas, it could not remain unseen. And then the same thing, a bunch of book codes, the product of the first two prime numbers. And then below it, you've shared too much to this point. We want the best, not the followers. Thus, the first few there will receive the prize. Good luck, 3301. Now, the first image led to a poem by William Gibson called Agrippa. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, but that's how it's spelled. So when they ran this book code against the poem and applied the product of the first two prime numbers, it gave them a new kind of address. This was the first time they'd gotten a .onion address. Now, onion addresses are used on the Tor network, which is short for the onion router. So that makes sense. And this is an open source software enabling anonymous communication. So this took them to a message that told them to create a new email address that they have never used before, and gives them instructions on how to to submit that email address to Cicada 3301, and how they can then get a code to go to the next step. It's unclear if anyone ever solved the second image. There's really no information about it. So everything that I was able to find was based off of this Agrippa solution. So the people who solved this Agrippa message, the Agrippa poem part of the puzzle, were sent an email, and it said, this message will be displayed once. Here's a message that has been encrypted with RSA, and then the message followed. Now, RSA, if you've ever used a company computer, you may have got one of those little key fob looking things that has a number that changes every 30 seconds or every minute. That's what this was using to encrypt. Remember, the one of the last communications, so that if they were sharing too much and they only wanted the best, not the followers. So people who were sharing information and working together, they were being tracked somehow, and they were being cut off. They were getting emails saying, you're sharing information, you're cut off, even if you solve everything. Like, you feel free to try to solve it, but we'll never accept you because you've been sharing information. You can't follow basic directions. So the people follow directions were given one last puzzle. They involved MIDI songs, and they had to decipher them I think they used the binary code out of the MIDIs to decipher with other codes, like Caesar ciphers and Vigenère ciphers. And when they solved that, they were sent an email. Now, this was never supposed to be seen by anybody, but someone did leak theirs. And for a long time, they weren't sure if this email was legit because there was no PGP code on it. But then others came out and they realized this was probably legit. So the email is pretty long. I'll give you the highlights from it. They basically congratulate the people who have succeeded. They say there's one last step. There's no deciphering or treasure hunts or anything like that. They just ask that the person receiving the email is honest with them because they've always been honest. They say, you have wondered who we are, so we shall now tell you. We are an international group. We have no name. We have no symbol. We have no membership rosters. We do not have a public website. We do not advertise ourselves. We are a group of individuals who have proven ourselves, much like you have, by completing this recruitment contest and are drawn together by common beliefs. A careful reading of the text used in the contest would have revealed some of those beliefs, that tyranny and oppression of any kind must end, that censorship is wrong, and that privacy is an inalienable right. So basically, they say they're not a hacker group or a wares group. They don't engage in illegal activity. If you are engaging in illegal activity, you're asked to stop immediately or you will be thrown out. They say they're much like a think tank. You probably have heard of a few of their projects, although you don't know who they are. And then it says, please reply to this email with the answer to the next few questions to continue. And the questions are as follows. Do you believe that every human being has the right to privacy and anonymity, and it is within their rights to use tools which help obtain and maintain privacy, cache strong encryption, anonymity, software, etc.? I think there's some punctuation missing from that. Do you believe that information should be free? Do you believe that censorship harms humanity? We look forward to hearing from you, 3301. And then after that, there's nothing. There's no action on any of those onion URLs, on any of the subreddits, on any of the 4chan posts, nothing. 366 days later, again, post it to the 4chan forums. It starts again. This time, I don't want to say it gets darker, but you start to see kind of where this is going. And it starts again with an image with a black background, white text, and it has the following message.
Hello again. Our search for intelligent individuals now continues. The first clue is hidden within this image. Find it, and it will lead you on the road to finding us. We look forward to meeting the few that will make it all the way through. Good luck, 3301.
Now, a lot of the same methods are used and can be used through all these puzzles. So the 4chan groups are in again. They're like, we're in. We're going to solve these ones. So they use outguess again, and they get a message that says, welcome again. Here's a book code to find a book. Break this riddle. And the riddle is, a book whose study is forbidden, once dictated to a beast, to read once and then destroyed, or you shall have no peace. Then there's a series of book codes below that. It says, good luck, 3301. Now, the book that it's referencing is the Book of Law by Aleister Crowley. If you're not familiar with Aleister Crowley, you should do some research on him. This is interesting character, maybe not the greatest person. So when you ran that book code on the Book of Law by Aleister Crowley, it gave you a link to a Dropbox file. This file was a bootable image. And if you're not sure what a bootable image is, if you're a Linux user, and I think Windows does it now too, you can install the operating system on like a thumb drive or a CD, and then you put it in a USB port or a CD tray if you're using a CD. And once it starts up, it runs like the operating system. So it's a bootable image. Once this image was booted up and it was running, it ran a script that printed to the screen all prime numbers up to 3,301. Every number, it came out in a very even succession of numbers, except for two spots. At the numbers 1033 and 3301, it paused for 2 seconds. After the second pause, it showed a message. It said, at 123-150-705-1321. The key is all around you. Good luck. 3301. It then, after this, booted into a basic Linux operating system, and I don't think it was named this. I think people just called it Cicada OS. In this OS, there was a folder called Audio, and in that audio folder, there was an audio recording called 761 MP3. When they opened the file and they looked at like the ID tags, the ID fields, it was titled The Instar Emergence by the artist 3301. So 2 minutes and 47 seconds long. You could hear the acoustic guitar, the drums. There was like a reverse guitar at the end, kind of poorly recorded. The song itself seems to hold no actual meaning, but when they do a hex dump of that file, so basically it's a Linux utility, a hex dump is a Linux utility that displays the contents of the binary file. It reveals the following message: the Instar Emergence, a parable 1,595,227,641. Like the instar tunneling to the surface, we must shed our own circumferences, find the divinity within, and emerge. So if you're not familiar with instar, which I had never heard the term before, but instar is basically like the what an insect does when it molts. So it's a changing, it's a shedding. Also notice about this is that the song at 2 minutes and 47 seconds, that would be 167 seconds long, which is a prime number, and is the reverse of the title or the name of the file, 761, which is also a prime number. So a lot of prime numbers going on here. Then there's a Twitter account found. In the Twitter account, the handle of the Twitter account is that number that I read that was in the operating system after it booted up all the prime numbers, that at 123-1507-05-1321. That was actually a Twitter handle. And this Twitter account apparently used a bot to post tweets of hex code at varying intervals for a while, up until like 4:53 on January 8th, 2013. It just kept on posting these hex codes. Someone figured out that with those tweets, those hex codes and information from the MP3 file, you could build an actual JPEG image out of all that information that shows a table of runes in a specific order, and basically the significance of these runes in the order that they're in is numerology. That image, though, that was created with those hex codes and information from the MP3 could be run through Outguess and revealed a blank message that was later revealed to contain tabs and spaces that could be converted into binary, that could then be converted into ASCII to reveal the message come to, and then there's an onion address there. It's a big way around. So you really had to do some figuring to get to this address. Below that, it says, "We shall await you there. Good luck, 3301. When you go to that page, it shows like ASCII art of Cicada with the words, "Web browsers are useless here. Welcome." It took a little bit for them to figure it out, but then they find that they got to use a service called Telnet, which picture the command line on your computer. It's like that, but it's between computers, so network computers. So after several steps and 3 different layers of onion addresses, they found more GPS coordinates that took you to, in the real world, physical paper posters, stapled to poles and taped to windows and stuff like that, that had the Cicada logo. But this time, instead of a QR code, there was a phone number. And there was different phone numbers, I think, on each poster or each region. The phone number gave you a message that had to be decoded with the runes from that picture. Now, I didn't get any clips or any kind of information on what the voice messages were, just that they had to be decrypt it with those runes. These gave clues that had to be decrypted and then combined. So each clue was a part of another onion address. And this final onion address took you to a test that was a series of questions that appears to have been like a personality test. Kind of weird questions. It was timed. They didn't want you researching stuff. And then after the test, they were tasked with a program. So after this personality test, they were tasked with a programming test. They had to build a FTP server or something like that. Like they had to do something like crazy. Like they actually do programming. And then at that point, the puzzle ended. There was no more information. I believe there was a similar email that came out at that time, but this email didn't leak until like 8 years later. So it was almost exactly word for word the last email. And then that was it. Again, it just stops. They find a few people, it stops. And then a year later, again, on January 6th, 2014, this time on Twitter, not on 4chan, there's a link to a black image with white text that says the following.
Hello, Epiphany is upon you. Your pilgrimage has begun. Enlightenment awaits. Good luck. 3301.
So now we've begun puzzle number 3. And again, they run the image through Outguess and they get a message. It says, the work of a private man who wished to transcend, he trusted himself to produce from within. There's then a series of numbers for a book code. And then at the very bottom of it, one letter per line, it says .onion. Good luck. So you can guess where this is going. These book code numbers are going to give you numbers and letters for an onion address. When they solve this and get the onion address, it takes them to Self-Reliance in Other Essays by Ralph Waldo Emerson. That gets decrypted, takes them to another onion address showing a collage of 4 images from William Blake. That gets deciphered to need another RSA token to figure it out, which winds up leading to another onion address showing the message, once again, patience is a virtue. So the next part of this is a series of ciphers and images and decodings and ciphers and images. But all these onions need to be decrypted using the runes from 2013. And then there's a bunch of these messages, and I'm gonna have these read off to you. But we start to see, at least I start to see something a little bit concerning. So, this is a huge series of onion address to image to outguess to message to cipher to onion to image to outguess to message to cipher to image to onion. It just keeps going and keeps going. I did not take notes of any of that. I was reading it and my head was spinning, but I did pull out the messages that they were getting. And this, like I said, this gives me a kind of an uneasy feeling, the wording of some of these. So I'm going to go ahead and start playing these for you.
Good work. Ultimate truth is the ultimate illusion. Join us at FV7L YUCMEOZZT5J for ONIO.
So another onion address, but ultimate truth is the ultimate illusion. Interesting. Here's the next message.
Some wisdom. The primes are sacred. The Tosha function, sacred. All things should be encrypted.
Followed by,
welcome, welcome, pilgrim, to the great journey toward the end of all things. It is not an easy trip, but for those who find their way here, it is a necessary one. Along the way, you will find an end to all struggle and suffering, your innocence, your illusions, your certainty, and your reality. Ultimately, you will discover an end to self.
And then the last message was this.
It is through this pilgrimage that we shape ourselves and our realities. Journey deep within, and you will arrive outside. like the end star. It is only through going within that we may emerge. Wisdom, you are a being unto yourself. You are a law unto yourself. Each intelligence is holy, for all that lives is holy.
So like I said, this went on through all these onions and images and ciphers with these messages that to me imply that these people are being initiated into something. This talk about divinity, but also programming, reality, and losing self and the end of all things. This all leads to another programming challenge. It's a weird mix of finding yourself and almost occultish thoughts and wisdoms combined with programming and being able to, like, this programming challenge was another, like, build an email server or some crazy thing like that. And then it just ends. No one knows if there was another email sent, if people were selected, if people were kicked out for this last one. There's no information about it. It just stops. So it leaves these questions like, who or what is Cicada 3301? Is a group called Cicada and 3301 is just a person, or is it vice versa? Is it some giant tech company that's trying to recruit people who are smart enough to figure this out? Is it some 3-letter agency that's trying to root people out? I mean, I had the thought too that maybe this is a serial killer just wants to knock off some smart people, because these people who were answering these emails, they just disappeared from 4chan. They disappeared from Twitter. They just went dark. No one ever heard from them again. Were they recruited into something? Were they knocked off? Was this all a hoax? Was there nothing behind it? Was it just simply, somebody in the very beginning started this and enough people around the world started to figure out the hoax? Maybe that decoy really was a decoy. And if you found information in the decoy, it taught you that it was a hoax. And then these people that figured it out were then in on it. So when we had these big global postings of these posters, it was just people who figured out it was a hoax. And they're like, hey, this is fun. Let's do it. And they started posting them. It's really, really bizarre story. And the fact that it just ends, like, there's usually something you can find. And all I can find is that at the end, all these images that were generated from these onions to get these ciphers, there was more. There's like close to 30 more images. So once it got this part where the final programming challenge happened, all those images that didn't get made or didn't get solved, there were still so many left. This 3301 just did an image dump on either Twitter or 4chan somewhere, just dumped all these images and just vanished, never to be heard from again. Those people are still trying to figure out these images, but who knows what they're for? I mean, a lot of these addresses are missing. A lot of the servers are gone. Pretty much everything you can find is just, there's actually a website devoted to the Cicada 3301. I'll put a link to that at the bottom. That's where I got a lot of my information, where it just goes through step. And then there's pages off of each step that take you to more information about how these ciphers are figured out and what the meanings behind the parables are and what the meanings behind all this is. Was that the point, to get this to a point where it just took on a life of itself? Such a crazy story, and with absolutely no answers. Now that we're like 11 years past the first puzzle, and we're getting further and further away from this, it'd be interesting if there was at some point like a whistleblower situation where somebody who completed the puzzles and got recruited or whatever happened comes out and says, this is what happened. It'd be very interesting to see what this was all about, if it was about anything. But like I said, so far at this point, 2023, No one's come forward claiming that they were Cicada, involved with Cicada, that they were 3301, that there were any of these people that were posting on 4chan or Reddit. No one's taken any credit for anything. And I find that really, really bizarre. So now that my head is absolutely spinning with this information, I hope you guys enjoyed this one. It was, I've really dove into some rabbit holes already so far this season. I got some more cool stuff planned. I know Rocco's got some cool stuff planned. I hope you guys are enjoying the season. If you are, shoot us a message, leave us a comment on YouTube, or send us an email. Leave a voice message on Spotify. Do something. Let us know you're listening. Let us know what you think. And that is going to do it for me for this episode of Primitive Intelligence Podcast. Thank you for sticking around and listening. See ya.